pay you to do this? Is that what you got, dishwashing gloves? We're gonna look like a bunch of amateurs. What's this?
A sawn-off shotgun. It's what you asked me to get you.
It's gonna kill everybody in the room.
Mark Trapman's game was hit a couple of nights ago.
Hey! Just give it all up and nobody gets hurt. It's only money.
I think the first thing that everybody wants to know, Andrew, is how do you choose which particular dogs that Ben takes out with him on that first scene?
You know, they were a pretty lame bunch of dogs, I have to say. They're very concerned with the rights of animals in movies. And they guaranteed the dogs would do certain things which they wouldn't do.
I loved the dogs. Look, one of the reasons that Andrew, like he was so excited about me doing this because, I'm a dog freak. Yeah. I basically sat around unemployed in Sydney for 3 years straight. And, the two things that saved me were the rugby league and my dog.
I keep a real open mind when it comes to casting. And that's why I say it's always about the character. I mean, there's many actors that I think are good, but really good actors, but I never think, I want to work with that person, I want to work with that person, until the character exists that person comes to mind for. With this film, actually was set up before I started writing it. I basically corralled the situation in which everybody was forced to make a film. And a number of people were in my head as I was doing it, so Ben's character was essentially written for him and Jim's character was written for him. I had him in mind, so I'd spoken to him beforehand and, Jim agreed to do it and then changed his mind, and there's a bit of a dance involved with getting Jim there, and you don't know whether he's going to turn up until he does turn up. I mean, like, Jim is just a great actor. I mean, the only shit you're going to get for that is like he's Tony Soprano. But what are you going to do? Not cast him because he's good in something else? I mean, it's just stupid. And also, the idea is to do it like a 40s picture. Like, it's like Walter Brennan always played the same character. It's like I wanted to make a movie that was typecast. And it's cast for comedy. You got the fat guy, you got the Australian junkie, and you got the skinny, goofy-looking dude. And the audience can remember who they are. Once you actually have to deal with the business of making the film and making the scene work, we've all got the same concern. So the idea of like who's this and who's that, you just forget about it,
And Andrew and I, we're very, very close friends, and we have known each other a very, very long time. We can really get the shits with each other, but we also have a real laugh, and we did both regularly. He would punish me much more than he would punish other people. He was also nicer to me than he was to anyone else. Andrew looks at character in a really intense way, in a way that very few directors are inclined to or capable of, I think, and that's a real treat. When you're doing a relationship that's close with someone, and if it comes into it in the script, you want to get to the point where you can get the shits with each other quite easily. For me, that's the litmus test of when you've achieved a good acting relationship with someone, because that's what genuine long-term relationships to me are the marker of, the ability to have your negative feelings about each other and still enjoy each other's company. I think what you find is that you have that area in front of the camera and immediately around it, and that stays the same, no matter what you're doing. But it's the fuss and bother that can go around. Very early on in our friendship, Andrew was telling me what his ideas about a set were, and they were that the set should reflect the feelings in the scene. For me, it's very, very important to feel relaxed in the environment. So I will do things to make sure that occurs. And if there's someone that's vibing me out or something like that, I will either attack or flee.
Most people associate the development process in Hollywood with the word horror. How difficult was it for you to survive creatively in a situation where it doesn't look like you're ever going to get anything up?
It's really frustrating, but I've kind of learnt my lesson by observing various people in how to handle it. And on this film, essentially I created like a panic type situation for those who had money, that they all wanted to rush it in fast. And I also put myself in a situation where I didn't start working until they paid. And to do that, they had to commit to making the movie to get me to go to work. But that was only something I was able to do because of Brad. You know, I essentially got him to leverage the situation. But mainly what I do is work on things that don't happen. You know, the circumstances have to be really right to make a film. It's a real undertaking and, you know, it can go horribly wrong. And I think that for directors certainly, and to some extent actors, there's a lot of pressure on you. You know, it's not like the old studio system where you're making like 4 movies a year and you can make like, you know, 6 crappy films while you learn what you're doing. I mean, every film... I don't know if this is true, but it certainly feels that way, that every film that you're making could be your last. Studios are making less films and they're making sequels and they're getting less and less adventurous and people who are interested in making good cinema, there's maybe 5 financiers and, you know, there's a lot of really talented filmmakers out there that are all competing for the same dollars.
Now, in Chopper, when it first finished, you weren't quite sure about how effective the speeded up scene was in conveying what it's like to be on speed. And then in this film, there is a stupendous account of what it's like to be on heroin.
You just try and come up with a way to describe it, I guess. You know, I mean, the primary idea of the scene is it's supposed to be comic. You know, like one guy's trying to get information to save his life out of another guy who's like falling asleep. It was really fun to shoot. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
we kind of just worked it out on the day. It was like I knew I was going to have a camera on the dolly track, and we were going to have all the lights, you know, that were dim, and we just shot it like in really long takes. You know, like we just roll a mag out, and Ben and Scoot would talk to each other. In Chopper, basically what we did was we recorded the sound at normal speed, recorded the dialogue from the scene first, and then we played it back at half speed, and we shot it at half speed. With a rotated shutter, so it seems like super sharp and staccato when it was played back. And that scene, they have to play this scene like, oh, Chopper. I think editing is the hardest part, and it was a real shock to me when I made a feature film because, my previous experience was making like a 3-minute music video, a 30-second ad, and they come together really fast, and you just think, wow, you can do anything in the editing room. You can paper over all your cracks and... but you've only got to come up with 30 seconds of like decent stuff. And cutting a movie is a really difficult and mysterious process. And all films go through a stage where they're just shit, you know, and you can't see the light at the end of it until the day that it works. And then you feel like, oh, I'm a genius, you know, like, why do I ever doubt myself, you know, all that kind of stuff. And nothing that you learn from one film helps you in the next one.
Because Jesse James, I can imagine that editing process in terms of pure horror, where you cut down 4 hours, and then I believe there were a couple of other editors brought on and you were removed from the editing process.
Well, that was a really bad situation. And on Jesse James, I essentially had to bully my way back in because they don't fire you. What they do is they sideline you. They basically... bring people in to help you, and then you find yourself kind of like shunted out the door. And what I realised was that financial disasters happen every weekend, but the kind of disaster where a director will take his name off a picture, you know, like an Alan Smithy film, that's a real major cause of like corporate embarrassment, you know. So all I had to do in that situation was just threaten, you know, to do that unless I got my way. And I eventually just barged in and then fought like a war of attrition for a year.
That final line, which basically sums up the film in a nice, neat bow and a tap on the head to America, were people going, oh, hang on, you just can't say that?
Well, the political content is not in Higgins' book at all. That was just some overlay of mine. And I guess I've noticed some reaction against all the political stuff, but it's just like they don't want their politics and gangsters mixed up, maybe like religion and porn or something. You know, the thing about going to America as an outsider and somebody who's been raised on American culture, you realise how much American cinema is about America presenting itself as it wants to be seen, and there's a big gap between that and the way Americans actually are. And, you know, there's a basic difference between us as people. You know, Americans are not a tribal people. They're a nation of individuals all out to cut each other's throats, you know. And that's what's great about them.
This guy wants to tell me we're living in a community. Don't make me laugh. I'm living in America. And in America, you're on your own. America's not a country. It's just a business. Now, fucking pay me.